We are an admissions consulting firm focused on study in India and study in abroad, respectively. We focus on the entire end-to-end journey of candidates, right from school selection, profile evaluation to actual application preparation, and then eventually interview prep. In the last couple of years in India, there have been two or three new B schools that have started, which are essentially focusing on redefining the management education, so to speak. And one such school is Masters Union. It is based in Gurgaon, and if you've seen the news, they were in the news for their astounding placement numbers, which we will definitely talk about today. And so we thought of bringing Karan in, who's the director of admissions at Masters Union, and he'll talk about what the school stands for, what are the ethos, and what are they looking for in a particular candidate. We'll definitely touch upon a lot about the placements as well. So without further ado, thank you, Karan, for joining us. And for a start, could you please give a quick introduction about you?
Sure. Thanks a lot, Manan, for having me on the session today. Just a bit about me. I'm someone, as you've pointed out, manages the admissions at Masters Union. Before that, I've spent about 5 odd years in the education space itself, looking at cross-functional teams in engineering, education, and business. And before that, I had graduated with a major in liberal arts from Ashoka University, before which I studied electrical engineering from the University of Toronto. So quite a mix, but yeah, I'm here today.
Well, liberal arts, electrical engineering, and you're now the admissions head,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
three different things. Pretty interesting, and I think also goes to on to speak the kind of diversity the school offers as well. So let's first talk about it in the sense, there's a lot of information going around on your website, multiple sessions you're doing with respect to how the program is, etc., etc. So there's a lot of information there. Let's talk about the stuff that is not covered so far, or that the students might not even know with a simple Google search. So what are the top two or three things you would like to tell the prospective applicants with respect to that?
Um, yeah, I think it's pretty interesting. What we've listed on our website is quite exhaustive in terms of people to get to know about the information. However, one thing, and I think you kind of hinted at that, which is the diversity of the cohort, is what I'd like to highlight, which is what kind of peers you can expect to be around you when you join Masters Union. So I think that's something that we've kept as a distinct feature. When we've seen admissions for our third cohort, which is currently on campus, we looked at people who from all the way from like an ISRO scientist who's worked on technology that's out there on space, all the way from a person who's had acting experience and have some movies on MX Player, for example. So from that wide of a range, I think that's something that we spanned, and we're always our focus was to be background agnostic. We literally look for very few things in the candidates. We look for leadership potential. We look for, say, a certain academic curiosity that they've displayed. And all of this, of course, to be demonstrable, but it all adds into the diversity of the cohort, given that people are coming in from different geographies, backgrounds, in terms of education, in terms of profession, even in terms of the languages they speak. So I think that's all added to the richness, whether it comes to, say, making a new startup here. We've seen 4 or 5 teams from of people from different parts of India kind of contribute and come to that knowledge of that product with that realization that the sum is greater than the individual parts.
Pretty interesting that. Let's talk about the admissions part for a start. So first of all, you mentioned there's a lot of diversity in the class itself in terms of how the peer learning shapes up. So what kind of students are you looking for? Of course, you can't bucket it into a typical profile, but if I were to, ask you to draw up two or three personas, what would those be?
Sure. I mean, I'll start off by giving a more generic kind of outline of the core values that we're looking at in terms of what we see we want our students to possess, and then I can perhaps help people out with some of the personas that we're looking at, getting and then curating as well. In terms of overall guideline, I think something that I'd mentioned before is that person that we're looking, first of all, needs to be open to new ideas, open to opposing viewpoints, open to new viewpoints, because that diversity certainly leads in with it certainly different conversations that people might not have had before. So people who are open to have these conversations. Number two is people who have leadership potential, and that's not something that we judge as an objective thing. That means, if you've handled X amount of crores in a fund, we don't consider that person a leader versus someone else. It's all about providing context and providing evidence for the same. So, for example, if there's someone who's a captain of their football team, and in that league they're almost about to exit the league or lose the match, but through some experience they can win, we count that as leadership as well. So that's something that's also important for us. A third thing that I mentioned before was academic curiosity, or curiosity to in general learn new things. Something that I'd say is more of a problem solver approach. That if there's a certain idea and it can't, it's nagging you in your head, and you're up till like 12 a.m., 1 a.m., kind of Googling away and seeing what the answer is, going into those deep dives. We see, or at least I see, the kind of students we have are quite resourceful in that particular aspect. So I'd say these are the three kind of overall guidelines that we look at. But more specific profiles, I mean, we try to curate people who are, investment bankers who can also code in Python, or say a fresher who is also someone who's a chief of staff, for example. So we're looking at creating elite generalists. What we want is those raw materials, essentially, that we can look to then develop throughout the course of that program for these people to reach that objective. So whether it's people coming in with an engineering background who then have also a content creation thing on the side, for example, and someone who has a product management background as a job, something that they're earning money from, but as a passion that they've opened a business focused theme Instagram channel, for example, or someone who is coming in with, say, someone who's really young out of college, but had great outcomes in and looking at consulting, for example. We're looking at that person being a very proper fit for something like a McKinsey, Bain, or BCG in terms of the level of energy and enthusiasm they can display. Of course, I think that's a value add with the freshers that we have, and the level of coachability that I think that they can have on display as well. The fact that they have the analytical skills, the communication skills, and that interpersonal skills already present, and then that's something I think the companies really really like.
No, I like the fact that you're saying that, wherever you come from, you need to be, or you want to transition towards a generalist as well, because ultimately, as business leaders, you have to do almost everything under the sun.
Yeah.
And then with respect to that, I think there is a certain set of profile also would be doing well in internships, might have a side gig as well, in addition to their jobs. That would be essentially something that you would look for.
Yeah, I mean, what I'd say is we can really make out how people are using their time. Specifically, if you look at the pandemic, a lot of people have started businesses, or a lot of people have started new side projects that they've actively been able to pursue passive income from, for example. That versus someone who spend their time watching YouTube or Instagram, that's something that we can make out with someone's profile when they're kind of applying there as well. So we're honestly looking for how have you utilized the skills that you've learned either at work or in university where you're currently studying. How do you use your time outside the classroom or outside the workspace? Are you involved with any social impact projects, for example? Are you looking to kind of go outside and help the community in that aspect as well? So it's a complete, let's say, holistic evaluation that we conduct for the candidate. We really don't feel that the academics should be one focus. We kind of look at each and every aspect of the profile before we make a decision for that.
Right, right, makes sense. And let's talk about the process. Considering there's a lot of diversity at play. Uh, of course, your essay topics also are offbeat,
Yeah.
and so first let's talk about how how would you approach, or how would a student approach these topics in terms of thinking about it, and what exactly are you looking for in them in terms of the clarity and those kind of things.
Understood. Understood. So I'd like to give perhaps an example from cohort 3 and cohort 4, some of the samples of the essay topics that people can expect. And, these we've given people an option to either answer through text or through a video. So people have that flexibility to choose that medium. In terms of some of the essay topics, I remember last year we had asked students to add dash tech to any word and invent a new industry and explain how that industry works, for example. So we had a lot of interesting responses from logic tech to religion tech to things that people had not thought about before, perhaps, and they were pushed to kind of think or think critically. And critical thinking is something that we really look at. That's something that I definitely say is how deeply have you engaged with the prompt? Is it a very surface level understanding? Have I just Googled and seen the first two, three links? It is a very, like, say, surface level response, or is it something that you've actually put in time to really deeply think about? And is it a new take, or is it a different take on what the answer that's coming out? The second thing is, I think I mentioned this before, which is demonstrable leadership, demonstrable anything. What we don't want is like unsubstantiated claims. So use data or use some anecdotes to back whatever words you're saying or the arguments that you're presenting. So it's not enough to tell me, for example, I'm a curious person. I won't be able to decipher much out of that. But if there's an anecdote that you can show that I can implicitly understand, okay, yeah, this person is inherently curious, I think that would be a better approach, in my opinion. So, in terms of the profiles or in terms of the students who do get accepted, we definitely see that there's a lot of clarity in the argument that they're presenting in their essays. And number two, that's backed with evidence and data. And overall, we see a really great start, finish, middle, and finish. I mean, at the end of the day, it should be an entertaining read as well to any new person. So I think that's something that we look for as an overall thing for the essays.
Right, right, interesting. So, so can you just drop the entire process for me in terms of, okay, now you're inviting applications. The deadline, I believe, is 18th or 19th of March.
Yeah.
So, is it a rolling process wherein somebody submits earlier, gets interviewed earlier, and all that?
So it's not a rolling process. So it's purely deadline based, but I can walk you through, or if I'm a student, I'll walk through the process in terms of applying. So first, I'd go onto the Masters Union website and register myself onto the application portal, verify my details. I think that's really, really important. Once that happens, you'll be directed to the application portal where you'll have to complete the application form from start to finish. And this contains the essays. It also contains the scholarships that you have to pick. So we have about 7, 8 different scholarships that are in different buckets that students, whatever they think that they're the most fit for, we allow them to choose a maximum of 2 for their evaluation. So the scholarships element exists. There's certain extracurricular activities and professional qualifications that students choose to put down. So there's an entire suite of about 7, 8 things that we ask, and they complete the application and they submit the fee for the how you once you complete it, you can pay your application fee and submit the application. Once that's done, 19th March is our deadline for round two. Then the weekend after that is the internal admissions test that we administer, which is the Masters Union Business Administration and Admissions Test, which is the MUBAT in short. But if you've someone who's not given the CAT, GMAT, or GRE, or if you feel that your score, you've given it, but your score is slightly not so competitive enough, you can choose to give the MUBAT exam, which is happening on the following weekend. So for 19th March, that'll happen on the 25th and 26th of March. And we can use that score instead for evaluation. We actually use the best of the 2 scores that the student has admitted for evaluating.
Okay. And who conducts the interviews?
The interviews are actually conducted by our masters. And just an intro for people who don't know, the masters at Masters Union are MDs, CXOs, startup founders, and across marquee institutions and organizations. So someone like a Satish Krishnan, who's the MD of Standard Chartered, you can expect someone like that, or to take your interviews, or someone who's the CTO of Capgemini, or et cetera, et cetera. A lot of our internal masters in residence also take those interviews as well. So you can expect that the people who will be teaching with, and eventually you might find as your future recruiters potentially, you can find those people to be the people who take your interview.
Okay, pretty interesting. And again, gives a sneak peek in terms of how the classes would be run as well. So, in terms of scholarships, so are there any? And if yes, then on what basis and what you're looking for to provide scholarships to people?
Right. Yeah. So as I mentioned, there's about 7, 8 scholarships that we have on offer. I can walk you through each of them. And what a student has to do to apply is that they have to select that option in the application form. And that option is selected on the basis of their own understanding of if they fit into this. So we have the Karthik Ramana scholarship, which is a merit-based scholarship. So students are rewarded on the basis of academics or workplace performance, for example. We have the Rajni Thedi scholarship for women, which is only for women candidates. So women who are returning from work, or women who are, let's say, high performers, high achievers, or who had great academic or workplace success are encouraged to apply. We have the Mukund Rajan India Bound Scholarship, which is people who are outside India if they're looking to relocate. That's something that they can opt for as well. The Narendra Jadhav Diversity Scholarship, which is for underrepresented communities in the Northeast and in the Himalayan regions, for example. We have then we have the MU specific scholarships, which is one for tech leaders, entrepreneurships, and young leaders. So for tech leaders, that would be people who are, say, really, really accomplished in the field of technology, submitting their patents or code or for something, for example. Then there's the one for young leaders, which is for our freshers. students who are recent graduates and have displayed great leadership potential in those 3 or 4 years. We choose we encourage them to apply. And of course there's an entrepreneurship scholarship. So to apply for that, you'll have to be eligible for that, you'll have to have a business that's running for more than a year, and then showcase that to us in terms of the website, some statements if you want to showcase a description of that and why you want the scholarship.
Right. And what's the usual amount? How does it range from? Do you have partial tuition waivers or full tuition waivers as well?
So I think it's based on the tuition amount itself, and it's based on different slabs and percentages. So for students it could be about 10, 20, 25, 50, 75%. That's how it ranges.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good. Sounds good. So you touched upon, somebody who wants to come back from India, from outside India to, pursue a master's here. So let's talk about the international placements, and let's talk about placements in general. Let's pick up the international placements. Have there been any this time around, or what's the plan?
So we focused, on solidifying our domestic kind of market and tapping that over the first 2 years. But in terms of international placements or in placements in general, I'd like to preface my answer by saying that we're really looking at this in a different way in terms of upskilling our students and keeping it more interest based rather than that's something more company based. So there's really no day zero, day one, day two system where it's more company focused to for them to take the better talent as compared to companies who might come later. We really want to keep it student centric, so we get them to decide which firms they want to apply to, and accordingly their, I'd say, their skill sets are then primed and developed in that particular orientation. If you want to be a management consultant at McKinsey, that's sort of a different skill set to wanting to be a deep learning engineer at Microsoft. So you might have a
Yeah.
different path in terms of what you want to prepare for. But in terms of placements, we've had an alumni from our first cohort who graduated, who's working on a startup itself. They were recruited by Google Dublin's growth team directly out of India to join him. So I think that's something that we've looked at. In our second cohort, we had someone who had been placed with a blockchain firm in England, and they're currently working remotely as well. So they often do frequent visits to go up and down as well. But it's nothing that's out of the cards for sure. What we're really looking at is developing that core skill set amongst everyone, so that whether it's India, whether it's outside, whether it's a personal project, whether it's something that's given at work, they can kind of tackle it with really unparalleled competency as compared to say other peers that they might find.
Right, pretty interesting. And of course, the average package that came across was 33 lakhs. Let's delve deeper into that, and I'll ask a question which is asked on a number of forums right now. Is that fixed? Is that fixed plus variable plus stock options? What is the actual number, in hand usually that they say, right? Which is minus the CTC, minus the entire. Uh,
Right, right. Yeah. So the 33.1 figure was, of course, that, as you mentioned, had definitely raised some eyebrows. And we'd encourage everyone to kind of go through our placement report, which is available on our website and has been audited by the same firm that audits IIM Ahmedabad's placement report as well. So
Very
that
good.
provides a complete picture of what the CTC breakdown is in terms of the RSUs, in terms of the roles, the kind of companies, the transitions that our students have made from pre-MBA to post-MBA. So for a full picture or snapshot, I definitely encourage everyone to go there. One point on RSUs that I'd like to make is that we've actually not included RSUs that vest post 1 year, because that's something that we feel is a bit, let's say,
Very
we have control for that for people to kind of be there for that amount. But the
good.
kind of figure that we're displaying is for RSUs that only vest till the first year.
Okay, interesting. One thing I've observed on the communications and your marketing also is that you are focusing on chief of staff roles, generalists, as you said, more on entrepreneurship, tech entrepreneurship. What is the broad percentage of people who are getting in or aiming for the traditional roles of product management in top tech firms, or more importantly, the MBB consulting or Big Four consulting, etc.?
100%. I think one thing I'd like to clarify is that outcomes for students are not only in these new age contemporary roles, right? That's something that, people might come to us for, but our outcomes, whether it's in more traditional finance or consulting, as you mentioned, or product management, as you mentioned, they're still, really sound and, looking to grow as well. So someone who's looking at consulting, for example, we had McKinsey, Bain, and BCG come in our first year itself for front end roles to hire. That continued with our second year. That's continued with our third year, with BCG coming in, recruiting a lot of summer associates as well.
Yeah.
So it really depends on intent. What
Mm.
I think this is my personal experience, I've seen is that we have traditional finance firms coming in, for example, like a D Shaw or a Crystal or something like that. We've seen presence of these firms there. But when it comes to, say, fintech firms like a Zerodha, for example, that is pretty much exclusively recruited recently from a B school, which is Masters Union. Um, they are, let's say, more exciting opportunities for these students. So
Mm.
these students are looking at the work life balance, they're looking at the salaries, they're looking at the roles, they're looking at the companies, the location. So they're weighing a lot of these different elements in their head. So we find them moving towards these more tech infused contemporary roles that allow them to kind of have a larger span in terms of what they're controlling, rather than be more of a cog in the wheel. So we see our graduates be at the intersection of design, engineering, business teams, tech teams, for example. So these sorts of people need to have, let's say, a cross-functional skill set to be able to control these teams and deliver that output at work.
All right, pretty interesting. Yeah, I think, and I'm sure going forward as you go along, there'll be more investment banking and VC etc. rules coming in as
Yeah, yeah.
well as once that's what
We
comes. Yeah,
recently had a couple of firms, VC firms, come last week itself for recruitment. So I don't want to kind of give away anything because the process is still going on. But yeah, I think
sure.
outcomes for that are really like out there for students who are kind of interested in the VC space as well. Because we also run
Hmm.
this thing at Masters Union, which is the MUIF, which is the Masters Union Investment Fund, which is a 5 crore fund which is purely run by students, and it's their choice to invest in public or private equities, look at private markets, investing in startups, looking at REITs, whatever they choose. Of course, they have a
Mhm.
certain mentorship and leadership structure in terms of taking decisions, but to have that kind of fund management experience during college itself, we've seen that that adds a lot of value for specifically for people looking towards these kind of outcomes.
Right, right. Good to know that. And I think, given that it's a new school, students do have a lot of power and opportunity to shape the culture and whatever happens. Right, bring in new
100%.
if you want to from your network and whatnot.
Yeah, 100%. I think we really empower our students. One thing that we do after every course, after every master kind of teaches, is take a feedback from the students themselves
Mm.
on if their master was great, if there's certain relevant. And if they don't meet our benchmarks, then we look at better professors for them to come in, or we look at better systems for them to come in, or we look at
Mm.
this is across the board, right? Our students are really our foremost kind of focus when it comes to delivering a really great experience to each and every one of them.
Right, quite interesting. Let's talk about the student life. And one gripe which I've also observed when I was there on campus, while reviewing resumes for your internships, was that the campus is far from where we live and all that. So, how are we planning to tackle that, or if we are planning to tackle that?
Right. So I think in terms of the student life, what we're focused on is keeping more students on campus. Campus for us, as we visited our new space in Tower A as well, in DLF Cyber Park. It's pretty modern and contemporary, and kind of facilitates it for itself to a lot of, let's say, group work assignments, a lot of ideation, etc. So that's something that we'd want to facilitate for. Of course, it's something that we'd want to keep optimizing the living situations in Gurgaon, given the let's say recent surge of what's been happening. We'd want to facilitate it for it to be affordable for our students, and for it to be equal and easy for them to kind of have access to whichever part of Gurgaon that they want. We wouldn't
Yeah.
want them to be absolutely enclosed in a particular area, but we want them to have that freedom to explore. Because actually, this is part of our curriculum as well. We have this in the wild consulting challenge, for example, which is a group of teams, student teams, who are going to, let's say, an Uber driver or a vegetable vendor, or let's say a Revlon or a Subway, for example, and they're speaking to them to kind of talk about their PNL, what's the marketing like, what's everything like. So, and they work with them across a series of couple of weeks, and they help them improve that. They help them improve their branding. They perhaps help them with some pricing. They make some bundling and discounts, for example, for a vegetable vendor, for like a chole kulcha wala, for example, who's standing there. So what we've seen is these really interesting outcomes from students actually utilizing that business experience in all areas, whether it's in the classroom or outside. But with that thing, that outside bit also is equally as important to us.
Yeah, yeah. remember talking about a few drop shipping projects that they were doing, and they were visiting a number of thela walas and setting up their own thela as well for one of the
Yeah,
food items that they had. So yes,
yeah, yeah.
and,
I mean, that's pretty cool for me to see. I remember, I'll give you a personal anecdote. I had visited, there was a drop shipping fair that was conducted towards the end of that exercise. This was in Worldmark in Gurgaon. And what we'd done was, I mean, at the start of the fair, I had gone and interacted with some of the students, and I'd asked them to sell their products to me. And I'd
mm,
seen let's say, a 5 on 10 performance, right? In terms of them, they were quite ambivalent, they were quite this thing, but having then stood in the sun for 10 hours, selling to different people and kind of getting 200 people that they'd interacted with, I went back at night and actually went back to them in terms of, asking, can you sell me your products again? And there was like a 11 on 10. Like, I can't even believe to tell you the transformation that I saw even
mm,
within one day. They were thinking differently in terms of the age of someone who's coming in, whether they should talk in Hindi or English, what they should talk about. If there's some, it was really, really remarkable for me to see that, like, active, let's say, change of
mm.
realization happen in real time rather than in a classroom and through a book. I think that was really cool for me to see.
Right, quite interesting. So, in terms of again going back to the kind of students you're looking at, and I'm looking at the questions that you've received so far. So, what is the
Right.
experience range of people that you're looking at? And that begs the question: are you competing with IM 2 year programs? Are you competing with the likes of ISD or Bitsom or maybe the IM 1 year program? So, what is the sweet spot of candidate experience that you're looking at?
Got it. So in terms of our competition, I'd say we're kind of competing with really everyone and kind of, looking at transforming education from the ground up. So we
Hmm.
are really, even if it's outside India, whether it's the Harvards, Whartons, and Stanfords of the world, I think what our value proposition is, it is pretty much global, and what we want to drive is that you can learn business by running business, right? That's the core value proposition that I'd say we have. In terms of the experience range, we see about 3 to 3.5 years of experience be the average. However, we've had students like, in a second cohort, someone with 10 plus years of work experience, as well as students who are coming straight out of college as well. About 10 to 15% of what we call freshers make up a cohort.
Okay, 10 to
Yeah.
15%. And do you see the mix changing, like more experienced people coming in, or this is something that you're targeting going forward as well?
I think it's usually something that we target below sub 10% is what we find our freshers at. But yeah, in terms of the people who have work experience, I think, they can derive value out of an MBA because they've worked before. Because let's say if it's a process of elimination, at least you know what you don't like, right? So,
Yeah,
it helps you find what you eventually would like.
fair enough, fair enough. Okay, another question coming in is I have low GMAT. So what's the weightage of GMAT slash MUBAT in the entire process? The
Got it.
test score itself. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd say we evaluate on the basis of the rule of thirds. So 33, 33, 33. A 33% focuses on the academics overall, about the scores, your 10th, 12th, UG, your entrance examination scores. Then the next 33% is your experiences. That would be work experience, that could be extracurricular and leadership experience if you're a fresher, let's say social impact experience that you've had. And then the final third is your essay responses. We pay a lot of focus and attention to that specifically. So the GMAT and the MUBAT slash MUBAT, they form a certain percentage of the evaluation, but they're not all of it. So what I'd suggest is, if that person has a lower score, that they highlight spikes from the other areas to kind of mask for that happening in one area.
Okay, fair enough. All right. And what's your view of a person who's working for a big corporate but also working for a startup on the sidelines? Do you recommend putting that in the application? Basically, moonlighting, I think yes, but yeah, hear from you.
Yeah, I mean, I think, as long as you can, what I've said before, as long as you can justify, how you've been using your time productively, and what we want to see is a certain linear arc between what you're currently doing, where Masters Union is placed, and what you'd want to do. So if you can see a logical relationship, like, we I think that would hold you in good stead for sure. So for this person specifically, I'd say, if there's value in working in that startup, or if you're, building this thing from the ground up, and you're perhaps one of the members of the founding team or leadership team over there, that obviously certainly has certain merit.
Yeah. Just a follow up, I think, is there that I'm not getting paid for it. So that doesn't matter. I think it's more about what you're doing there, what is the impact that you're having. So getting paid is a second level outcome and
Yeah,
more
yeah.
important to you, not relevant to this, to be honest.
And also, I'd like to add is that we look for proof of work. So I think showcasing your work, even if you want to do it on a website or on Instagram, or at least that showcase of work is something that we prefer rather than it objectively having just been said that okay, this is something that I worked on the side.
And there's another question on the placement reports. Again, as I spoke about, there was an issue around the credibility of placement reports. As there are different terms in comparison to IMA. Would you again, shed light on that?
No, so I think it's the same firm that we're using, which is I think Brickworks Analytics, and again the same or the people that audit the IIM Ahmedabad report as well, and that's something again it's for us, beyond the placement report. If you want to talk to our alumni, I'd encourage this person to hop onto LinkedIn or perhaps hop onto the Masters Union page where you can see all of our cohort profiles there. Please do feel free to connect with them to kind of get more of an idea on the placements and how you can kind of tailor your own outcomes there.
Yeah, definitely. That'll be important for anybody who's,
Yeah.
looking at the session. Alums are there, and of course, reach out to the school. They can connect you with the alums, or just do that on your own as well, because it's important to do that research. And frankly, if I, again, school of this caliber, they will not bluff in public, right?
Mhm.
So whatever the number is, I'm sure it's credible. So let's take it on that, and then of course, proof is in the pudding. Talk to people.
Yeah.
Okay. And are we looking for any accreditation as well? Let's say the AASB, EQUIS, and all that. Plus, eventually getting into the FT rankings too.
Yep, yep. Correctly mentioned. We're looking at pursuing more international accreditations like the ASCB and the EQUIS accreditation that allow us to retain the USPs of our structure and format. And of course, in the future, our goal is to kind of really be up there in the FT rankings and be a major powerhouse that represents India and can stand with the likes of the Harvard, Stanford, and Whartons of the world.
Very interesting. Okay, I had another question that came in, through the registrations that a lot of new, older B schools have an alumni body who would be coming in, preparing you for placements and all that. And there is that alum interaction. While it's impossible to solve for right now for a school like yours. So, what kind of placement prep does the college offer beyond, of course, getting in companies? But in terms of preparation, how does that work out?
100%. I think it's a valid question, and I'd encourage this person to evaluate any business school with the alumni, and more specifically, the CXO that's come out of their alumni. If you're looking at leadership positions, you obviously need a certain amount of time 20, 30, 50 years for that college to have existed for people to kind of reach these places. So, our kind of facilitation for these students is to take that same network of CXOs and actually make them the faculty, right? We want the same people who are from those spaces and are from those circles and communities to have opportunities to teach our students but also to network with our students as well. So in all of these businesses what we're seeing is the presence of masters union students in all of these circles, as you mentioned, number one. In terms of placement prep specifically, I think we have a really curated kind of approach for each student. I think what we'd want to do is be as individualistic and personalized as possible. We kind of ask our students what, at the start of the year, pretty much like where do you see yourself working, which roles, which functions. You give us a list of 5 companies, for example. So they kind of really work through that. We also have a series of practicums throughout the year, which are sessions that are hosted by, let's say, if it's a chief of staff or a product management practicum, these are professionals who have 15, 20 years of experience at major firms who are, first of all, giving an idea and flavor to our students of what life is like as a product manager or as someone who's a chief of staff. What skill sets would you need to prepare for the same? What's the raw material or what's the background you need to have? Is it something that's more for someone who likes data or versus someone who likes more communication, etc.? So these practicums really help them out. We have mentors from BCG, Bain, McKinsey, for example, coming in and helping our students with case prep, consulting prep, specifically for students who are actually interviewing with these firms. A lot of our leadership team is part of firms, are well, people are from these firms all as well. So I think that's something that really helps out for the students in placements over the long run. I think there's a very, very active focus on placements going from, say, term three onwards. There's certainly a front heavy emphasis to the academics in terms of developing a core skill set. Then I think the placement process kind of kicks in.
Right, right. Makes sense. And are there plans to have any international exchange programs with different B schools?
Yeah, for sure. I think it depends on the interest that we'd want from our students as well. For us, again, as I mentioned, for the first 2 years, we really wanted to fortify our position domestically as well. Once we get that MVP correct and we can deliver an authentic experience to our students that we know is kind of unparalleled, then we look at kind of adding more layers to the cake, so as to say.
Right, makes sense, makes sense. So we have almost come to the end of the session. So any closing thoughts you have, Karan, that you would leave the students with or the aspirants with as we close this?
Sure. I think one thing I'd recommend to everyone is, of course, the thing with Masters Union, we're really looking at it's a very genuine attempt at changing the education system from really the ground up in terms of our approach to our outclass challenges, in terms of our approach to getting students that position of responsibility. I understand, people might want to say have a side project or a startup, and it comes at a cost, right? For people who are working, they have to have an opportunity cost of the salary that's not earned or the time or effort that's not spent. There's no safe space to fail, and there's no safe space to fail repeatedly. I think that's what one thing that Masters Union can curate and give to you. And don't take this in the wrong context, but that failure will give you a lot of life experience. And to have 8 of them or 10 of them curated in 1 year or 16 months that you get at Masters Union, that really pays dividends at the time of recruitment. We've had a lot of great stories in terms of our placements as well of those people running startups from their VIP program before that as well. So the lessons that entrepreneurship can give you, specifically the ability to prototype rapidly or think of ideas fast or think quickly on your feet, that happens through experience. And for us to curate that for you across different domains and verticals, I think that's a really unique educational experience that you can go through by really honestly, setting up businesses, making money, doing well at some, not doing well at the others, but really learning how to be a CMO in one, a CTO in one, a CFO in one. So I think that practical understanding of adopting these different kind of personas in different spaces, that is something that I consider. These two, three things that I mentioned was it's a really unique process at Masters Union. So if you're kind of interested in that aspect of wanting to upskill yourself through that regard, I'd say it would be a good fit for Masters Union for sure.
Great. Thanks for that. And I'll just add on to it a bit in the sense that, these new schools that are coming in, and especially Masters Union as well, uh, for any student coming in and thinking, okay, this is new, there were IMs also were new at one point in time, ISB was as well. And what you should look at is the intent to basically, have a good career. And that's what they're trying to do, like Karan said, wherein they're giving you input metrics that are there, and then the process takes care of itself and you get through placements, etc. And then more importantly, their name is at stake. So if you don't do well immediately in the short term, then definitely whatever hard work that the school has put in will go waste, versus other schools which are established and they're pulling students in already. Masters Union right now will pull all, will not stop at anything to make sure that your career outcomes are there. So that is one thing that you should evaluate at initially, and then maybe 3 to 4 years down the line, then the quality of alum network comes in, and how things are, as an institution once it's built. It's like a startup, so to speak, right now. So all you have to do is, find a set of believers and then get it out of the way.
Yeah, 100%. I would agree. I think we anyway do feel like a tech startup. Most of the times we just moonlight as an educational university. So even
Yeah.
that's true for our students as well. They feel, when they come and say they feel like they don't feel like they're at a university. I think the location. Just one last point.
Yes.
With is the location. I think I want to put in. We're not really a college that's taken an approach to be having a huge campus with a swimming pool, this, that, whatever, outside a city somewhere. We've really managed for ourselves to locate a space in one of India's most premier business districts in Cyber City in Gurgaon. And for us, that's a big focus because we want practitioners to come and teach. So
Yeah.
think of it as a medical college with a business suit, right? Like you have doctors who come and teach students, and these are doctors who are doing surgeries in the morning or in the evening. Similarly, we have people who are running businesses live there, and they are coming to kind of be our faculty and teaching from that aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
makes sense. And you have a lot of companies in the campus itself to bring that.
Yeah, BCG is upstairs, like right above this floor.
Yeah, BCG, EY,
Yeah,
Amex, what.
yeah.
Cool. All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. Thank you, Karan, for taking out time. And in case you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to me about the admission side or anything about the school that you would want to know. Then definitely to Karan and his team. They'll be more than happy to answer any questions. Thank you
Okay.
and apply away.
Yeah. Thanks, Manan. Thank you everyone for joining.